Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Rise podcast, a podcast that helps India born, US trained Indians get integrated into the Indian technology ecosystem and inspires them to move back to India to build massive tech companies and or help enable the tech ecosystem. We do this by interviewing India born, US trained Indians who have moved back to India and built massive tech companies themselves and or helped enable the tech ecosystem. I'm excited to have Sumeet Mehta on 1947 Rise podcast today. Sumit is the co founder and CEO of Lead School. Lead School's mission is to empower India by making excellent education accessible and affordable to every child. Lead School is backed by GSV Ventures, WestBridge Capital, and other great investors. They're currently valued at $1.1 billion. Prior to founding Lead School, Sumit worked at ZLearn and Procter and Gamble. Sumit, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shiva. Thank you.
Awesome. So we'll start by you walking us through your journey of growing up in India, then moving to Singapore, and then moving back to India. What made you move back to India? How was the move like?
Sure. So I grew up in this small town called Pathankot. Both my parents were teachers. And for the first 16 odd years, I think life was blissful because in retrospect, it feels like living under a rock. But at that time, it felt like, that was our world. So I went to a private school, a convent school. And I think the first time I came out of Pathankot was when I got admission in an engineering college in Chandigarh, and that was a rude awakening for me because there were people who had come from Delhi, from Chandigarh, and we had come from what then we realized were the hinterland. And I think my first sense of uh, like there is something missing in my life came when people I had to fight for inclusion in the cool groups. People used to call us khuliya penta wale because we used to wear stitched trousers and denims were in vogue in larger cities. uh, so literally I that was the first time when I realized that there was something amiss in my schooling, in my background. uh, and then when I went to IIM Ahmedabad, the same story repeated. People would meet up, do high fives. They had gone to the same group discussion, personal interview preparation. I had taken a correspondence course from IMS. So there was a sense of unfairness I experienced, that people who grew up in small towns uh, don't have the same opportunities, same exposure that people who grew up in metros have. And I had come from a middle class family. So after IMA, I got into Procter and Gamble, had earning a living, and building some savings was important. So I joined them. PNG was a great company, very good learning ground. Went to Singapore with them, was handling the beauty care business. But every time I would come back to India, I would see that the same story is getting repeated with my nieces or my nephews. And one day I was sitting with one of my nieces, and like any indulgent mama, I was asking her questions from her book, and at one point she looked at me and said, "ये syllabus में नहीं है." And it hit me that even after, and that was like 20 for 15 odd years after I had passed 10th, I was like, things haven't changed. And if this story repeats, every child who's growing up in a small town is going to go through the same journey that I did, and that's not okay. And living outside India, you also tend to see the strengths and weaknesses of your country in relief. So it was very apparent to me at a macro level that 80% of India lives in small towns, and if everybody there is repeating the story I had, then there is clearly a big vacuum in terms of India achieving its true potential if 80% students are not going to do that. Uh, so I think that was the place where I said, okay, I've got to go back to the country and do something in the field of education. Uh, and I used to talk about it. And one day my dad told me कि अगर इतना ही bother करता है तो कुछ आके करते क्यों नहीं हो? I think that's the day I put in my papers with PNG and decided to come back to India and work in education. I met Subhash Chandra. He asked me to look at ZLearn. I ended up joining them as their CEO, ran that company for 5 years, got it listed. We grew about 5x in those 5 years. Uh, then I lost my dad in end 2009, early 2010, and that phase got me thinking that even though I was running Zlearn, an education company, was I really fulfilling the purpose for which I had come back to India, which was to drive equity in education. I think that that pondering led me to finally leave Zlearn and set up Lead with the purpose that in India, if you look at it, talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not, right. So I was like, if I can equalize opportunity by making excellent education affordable and accessible to every child, then we can truly unlock India's potential and the demographic dividend we talk about can become real. So that was the driving force why we set up Lead. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Love the journey so far. And how were the early years at Lead School? Where are we today? And what's the magical outcome that you have in mind for Lead School?
So we began by running one school in a small village near Ahmedabad. The first day, 14 kids came in. And I think those 3 years of setting up and running our own school were critical in us first understanding the ground level problems that students who come from small towns, vernacular families who go to English medium schools, what are the problems they face and how do we solve them? So literally by trial and error and necessity being the true mother of invention, we failed at all the solutions that were readily available in the market and then were forced to develop our own. Whether it was how do we teach English to non-English speakers, how do we teach math in English medium when students themselves don't understand English, how do we upgrade teachers with poor skills. So we ended up building a school system by running that one school, and then when we had to open four more schools. We realized that without technology we won't be able to do it, so we built school tech, the first version at that time. So at one point we were running nine schools, and me and my co-founder Smita, I remember one day we were walking and we said, okay, where is this going? And we kind of cast the net a little forward and said, if we continue doing this, we'll have about 60, 70 schools in our lifetime. Is that impact large enough to warrant both of us committing our life to it? Will we be satisfied with that level of impact? And the answer was a resounding no. And we saw that India had 1.5 million schools. So us running those 70 schools is not going to make a difference. Can we use the system that we have developed in our own schools, which was giving fantastic results? Can we take it to the already existing schools and improve the existing capacity? So that's the thesis in 2017 with which we said, okay, let's take our work outside to other schools. We raised a small round at that time to fund that growth. And since then, there's been no looking back. I think from those five of our own schools in 2017, we are now working with close to 4,000 schools, serving about 1.3 million students. And I think my vision going forward is that if we are able to take this kind of education to every child who's going to an affordable private schools and in the future even government school, uh, then the 270 million kids who go to Indian schools, they will truly be able to achieve their true potential, and because of that what India can achieve is actually unimaginable. So we want to
Yeah.
play a catalytic role in India becoming a confident, developed nation which achieves its true potential.
And what's the favorite part about your job? And a follow up would be, look, it has been a long journey, right? A lot of figuring out, a lot of pivots. We'll talk about few things there. One, like, were there times where you were like, man, this is not working out. Let's figure something out, completely something out, something different out. And secondly, like when you're feeling overwhelmed or things are not working out, what frameworks do you use to bring yourself back on track?
Excellent question. I think you're right. From the outside, it looks like a linear 10-year journey from 14 kids to 1.4 million kids, but it's anything like that, right? I remember 2 to 3 years into our journey, when we were running our first school, there was a point when we were about to lose ownership of that school because of a land dispute, and two other schools that we were about to start, the real estate partner backed out. So from a vision of making impact, we were close to having nothing. And both me and Smita asked ourselves that, uh, what's the way out? And we were actually very close to losing faith that, is a trust based approach going to work? Because we work in a certain way by trusting, by beginning with trust and having simultaneous kind of heartbreaks across three fronts was devastating. uh, but I think one thing which has held both of us in good stead is that, uh, at these weak moments, we always ask ourselves, are we being pulled back by our fears or are we being pulled forward by our vision? Uh, and I've realized that if you always anchor back to what is your vision and find within yourself to reserve, to persevere, there's always a
Mhm.
way out. And ultimately, the single biggest success metric for an entrepreneur is iteration and perseverance. Blinded perseverance can make you just hit a wall again and again, but iteration is important because you try something, it doesn't work, you try something else, it doesn't work, you try something else. And I think that is what really helped us get on. And within 6 months we had four new schools, and since then I think we haven't looked back. But yeah, I mean, that was the lowest point. uh, the other thing which has also helped us, Shiva, is that both of us practice Vipassana at some point. So it has given us a certain amount of, I would say, self awareness,
Mhm.
and centering, when there is high stress or when things are not going on. We are able to go back, center ourselves, reorient ourselves towards our vision. And I think with that clarity of purpose, then means open up.
Love it, Sumit. And you've been breathing, eating, sleeping, education in India. If you were to unpack, the evolution of education system in India to a 10-year-old, plus, what needs to be true for India to really democratize education for everyone in the country.
I think this is a really deep question and a really deep problem. I mean, we are going to celebrate 75 years of independence, and uh, it's a challenge that hasn't been solved in these 75 years. Uh, let's start with some basic principles. I think one is that if you look at a child, they spend 6 hours in a school, uh, and maybe 1 hour in tuition. So if whole child development and whole system transformation has to happen, it has to begin from school, because that's where the child is spending most time. And there are a lot of edtech innovations which are happening, which are circumventing schools, either on tuition or test prep and stuff. And I think they might be doing the role of a band-aid, but they will not build immunity from within. And I think if school transformation happens, then you are basically solving the core problem. Now, how does school transformation happen? Ultimately, the challenge is multi-layered, and it is in India, which has so much diversity. There is no one single solution. Government schools will require a very different solution. Affordable private schools require a very different solution. So let me talk about affordable private schools before we go to government. Half of India goes to affordable private schools. And if you look at 120 million kids going, that's the size of some large countries. So in affordable private schools, the challenge is that parents are paying a significant amount of their monthly household income to send their child to that school. But these schools are subscale enterprises. Now, in education, a lot has evolved over the last 20-25 years through brain science, through cognitive research, but that has not percolated down to these affordable private schools. And each one of them doesn't have the capability to do their own research, their own innovation, to be able to become 21st century ready. So really the innovation has to be on who is teaching, so improving teacher skill, what is being taught, is the curriculum teaching you for success in life or just passing exam, and how it is being taught, pedagogies, right? So if you
Mhm.
just innovate on these three levels,
Mhm.
who is teaching, what is being taught, and how it is being taught, then you have a template for school transformation. And my early realization was that traditionally we have tried to solve it through consultants or teacher training. which is a very rickety people to people model, and there's a lot of falling through the cracks. So ultimately, building a system which, if schools implement, bring about transformation on these three aspects: teachers skill enhancement, curriculum innovation, and pedagogical innovation, then you have a formula for school transformation which can bring education reform. So that's the thesis through which we've been working. Every school where we have implemented the lead school system, I can give a mastery guarantee that if your starting level of student mastery is 50 to 52%, that's what we see in our beginning of year assessments. Within a year, I will be able to take it to 70 to 72%. And not only that, class composition, which starts from only 30% students having any mastery above 70% level, I can take 70% students above 70% level. So this mastery guarantee is delivered only through implementing the integrated system that we have developed. So therefore, more and more schools adopting it is one path. And I think in India, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, you will see majority of the students running on school system, majority of schools running on school systems, because by themselves they will not be able to do the innovation, research, and development that is required for school transformation.
Yeah, there's three layers: the right teachers, the right curriculum, and the right way to deliver that curriculum to the students. I hope at some point uh, you help shape education policies in India and probably work with government at some point. Hopefully, I mean, we will be the right person to do that. Thanks a lot for doing that, Sumit. And we know you because of a tech entrepreneur solving or going after a very important mission, and been doing that for years. What do your friends know you for? Well, who are you outside of work, outside of lead education?
I think it has evolved. So my sense is, there are two critical kind of transition points for a person in life. For me, the first one was, when I became a father. Because before I was a father, I think I was a different person. We used to work hard, party hard, and friends and family. These were the two anchors after work for me. And when I became a father, I think that role kind of assumed, most important, most of the important things in my life. So after I become a parent, I think I've become more deliberate in my choices. And it happened around the same time I lost my father. So today, if you see, my friends would see me as somebody who is intentional, deliberate, a little considered, thoughtful. But 10 years, sorry, 12 years back, if you had asked, they would have referred to me as a happy-go-lucky, fun-loving person. So I think it's changed over a period of time. I still try to retain my sense of humor, but I've become more thoughtful in my actions.
I love it, Sumit. And thanks a lot, Sumit. I think the entire country is lucky, to be honest, to have you back and go after this very impactful problem, right? I think the core for anything uplifting a country comes down to education. That's what you're working on, and appreciate you for doing that. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
I had a great time talking to you. Thanks, Shiva.